Hey, and Carolyn, you can let us know when it's time to.
Yes, YouTube has started. LinkedIn is giving us a little bit of a hassle still.
Okay, all right. For our
You could
YouTube
chill for a
friends,
minute.
hang tight. Yeah, we're gonna get going. We're waiting for LinkedIn. They're always a second or so behind. It's just classic LinkedIn.
It
I feel
happens.
like LinkedIn is always our problem child when it comes to these.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, well,
Yes,
it's
YouTube has
just
started.
there
LinkedIn
might be
is
an
giving
echo.
us.
I heard you. I heard YouTube. All right. So hanging tight. You give us the signal when LinkedIn is fired up, and we will go.
You guys can start addressing this first one because I think the LinkedIn stream will catch up. Or if you want to start your introductions, it's still
Yeah, we'll do
showing
it.
a
Yeah, let's
lag,
start it.
but it usually
Okay.
kind of brings us full circle once it comes up.
We are gathered here. Hello, welcome. Welcome to the agency hot seat. I am your host, Ryan Watson, partner at Upsourced. I am joined here today by a very special guest. His name is Nick Petroski. I'm going to hand it to Nick to introduce himself here in a second, but really quickly, the ground rules for those of you that are new to the agency hot seat. You've got two hosts today, Nick and I, and we are here to answer your questions, whatever those questions may be. They can be finance in nature, they can be sales in nature, they can be operational in nature, they can be philosophical in nature. We are not the experts, but we're happy to answer whatever you got. So if you are joining us and you have a burning question that you would like us to answer with our collective decades of experience working in agencies, not that it's right, just that, we've seen it. Uh, Feel free to enter your question in the comments. That's right, Caroline. Comments either on YouTube or LinkedIn. Our very beloved Caroline will ask your questions here live, and Nick and I will tackle them. So, with that, let's get started. But before we get into the first question, what's up, Nick? How's it
How
going?
you
Introduce
doing?
yourself. Say hey.
Thank you. Thank you for gathering me here today. I
That's
appreciate
right.
it.
Yeah,
So you did do some gathering.
I did. I
Uh,
gathered in person. Yeah. Uh-huh.
you did.
Yeah.
You got me. You
Yeah.
got me.
I got it.
Full
Yeah.
full attention for at least half an hour, I've been told.
That's all. Yeah. 30 to 45 minutes. Yeah, exactly.
My name's Nick. For if you are on this stream and you don't know me, I run Promethean Research. I do a ton of research on digital agencies. I've been doing this for almost a decade now, and I use that research to build data-backed growth strategies for digital agencies. So you find out the data, find out something new, take that data over here and help agencies grow with it. Um, that's about that. That's a
Awesome.
succinct
That's
intro,
great.
right? I
I
don't
think
have to
that's
go
perfect,
deeper than that.
honestly, and that's great.
I like woodworking. I go out in the
Oh,
woods
okay.
every now and then. So
You look like a woodworker. I can believe
yeah,
that.
is
I
the sawdust in my hair? Like maybe that's
That
it.
might be part of it. Yeah, that might be part of it. I am not a woodworker. I am the opposite of whatever the anti-woodworker is. I just can't do it. I don't have any skills. Okay, so well, Nick, that's awesome, and honestly, it's great that we have you because we often get a lot of questions around sales, and I opine, but it'll be nice to have a real expert in the room. So, okay, with that, Caroline, what do we got? First question. No, you're good. That's fine.
All
All
right.
over the
It's good.
place.
There
Okay,
it
so
is.
our
It's
first
okay.
question, we're still
Yes.
working on LinkedIn. So if you're still trying to stream from LinkedIn, sorry, it's coming up. Our first question we're going to address is what's the most common growth issue you see in digital agencies?
All right. I'm gonna let you tackle this first because this is your wheelhouse. But I have thoughts too. So
I'm excited to hear
see.
what you got. So I launched a like mini version of our overall services uh earlier this year where I just tackle growth strategy. I just run
Yep.
through and say, this is what you should have, this is what you do have, here's where the gaps are. And
Yeah.
so I've seen a lot of these at this point. It was a pretty popular service. And the main thing that keeps coming up is like the lack of a growth strategy. Like
That's it.
it's
This
like
is where I was gonna go. Go ahead. Yeah, this
it's
is
the missing
right.
piece, right? So you you have this thing.
Yeah.
It's like I want to get from here to here, and I don't. I'm doing some things. I don't know if they're working. I don't know where I'm seeing success. I feel like it's in this space or it's in this space, and maybe you have a marketing team doing some things, and you have a sales team doing others, and biz dev and partners off doing their own thing, and there's no single source of truth. There's no cohesiveness. There's no like, there's so many shiny things that get thrown at us every single day. And it's like, do we do that? Is that real? Should we have an outbound strategy? Should we lean into thought leadership? Should we speak at events? You have to have like some document, some idea of what you're going to check those against. Every new shiny thing should come in and be checked against this single source of truth. And that's the growth strategy. So I think that that's easily the most common thing that's missing from these agencies that I've worked with.
Nick, I love this because, like I told you, that's exactly what I was going to say in a different way, which is like, we always analogize our work to sort of like helping people get in shape. And so, the financial reporting is like stepping on the scale, and the sort of solutions to you not liking what you see when you step on the scale is some version of diet and exercise. And I kind of view this discussion around like a client saying, okay, so like I need to exercise. So should I start swimming? Should I start biking? Should I run? Should I be a long distance runner? Should I join a CrossFit gym? And, where I see people fall down is like, well, I bought a really expensive bike and I rode that to work twice. And now it sits in my garage because I heard about a friend who was at a CrossFit gym. So I went with them for a couple of times and that seemed really cool until I got a membership to the pool. And it's sort of like, to be honest with you, again, there are certain tactics, at least in my view, that maybe are not necessarily the perfect complement to the kind of business that you're running. But I think if nothing else, like, you just have to do something. Like you have to do something with consistency. I've seen plenty of success with an agency that's created predominantly a content-based strategy. They've created this thought leadership but it's because that's their strategy and they're focused on it and they approach it with consistency. They can all work. Like, I don't think I've seen a strategy that just like can't work. They can all work if it's something that A, is like a good fit for your talents and interests, and B, it's something that you do. And the folks that fall down are the folks, like you said, that just don't have the thing. Like they don't have a growth strategy. It's just either sort of incidental, cobbled together, or it's like word of mouth, organic referrals. That's our quote strategy. Nothing that's active.
Yeah, that's a whole other path. I mean, if you have 2 hours today, we could go down it. But I love that analogy because there are so many paths to building a successful agency. There's no one way to do it. That's why there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people like me out there helping guide agencies, because there's so many ways that have worked and that will work in the future. I think you're absolutely correct though on the focus. Like that's something that comes up time and time again is if you are going to do a few different activities, a few different tactics that you're going to use to grow your agency, get really good at them. Like don't just jump from one to the next, to the next, to the next.
Yeah, totally. Love it. Okay, great. If only all of our answers are so consistent and harmonious, we could have really.
No, I want to argue. Let's fight.
No, I know we will. I have no question. Okay, all right. So let's see if we'll get on the next one. Caroline, what is the next question?
Yeah. So our second one is, what is the ideal structure of a sales and marketing department at an agency? Is it normal for separate people to be in charge of new business, existing accounts, and marketing?
What do you think? Yeah, what do you think about it? Because I'm interested. I'd love your take on this. I'll kick it to you. I won't make you answer first every time, but this is also a good one for you because
I did a report on this.
Because you did a report on it. So what? Yeah. Go start. Tell us what the report says. Yeah. What do you think?
It depends on the size, and as you in a small agency, the leaders, the owners, they're wearing a lot of hats. So you talk about like the ideal structure or the ideal composition of a small shop, say under 10 employees or under 15 employees.
Yep.
It is founder led, guaranteed all day, every day. Those founders have to get good at sales, account management, marketing, biz dev, all that kind of stuff. Once you get a little bigger though, once you get into that like 25-ish, maybe 50 employee range, that's when you can start segmenting out into these specializations. Because at that point, you have a leader or a group of leaders who have done this, right? They know what works, what doesn't for their shop. They're then piecing that out so that they can focus on other stuff. and somebody else can run with a deeper specialization in that space, whether it's marketing or whether it's sales or whatever the heck it is. So this idea of like the ideal structure, it changes as you grow. And it very much is get somebody that is a legit expert in that thing that you want to be good at. I don't want to say quickly as possible, but quicker than a lot of shops think.
So let me ask you a follow-up question on this. I don't think this came from the audience, but maybe they're thinking it like I am. So like it's sitting in my seat. I often see agencies misfire on bringing in their first outside salesperson.
Yeah.
I'd say that's maybe one of the most common failed hires. And I've seen it, and maybe the answer to this question is actually different depending on the size or whatever. But I mean, I've seen it. I maybe probably see it more commonly at, earlier stage agencies. But I also see it. I've got a client that's like close to 30 million and they're on their fourth outside salesperson. And for not because the other people left, just wasn't successful. So, in your work, what do you feel like, or what have you seen are like the biggest reasons that these hires don't pan out?
Think about it from the perspective of someone in that space. That you're an owner, you have 15 employees, you have 20 employees. That's usually where you start hitting your first sales hires. So you have 20 employees, you've grown this thing, and you've grown it because you've had to become competent or good across a lot of layers of rev gen. So you've become competent or good in marketing and in sales and in all those things and in account management. So in your head, in a lot of these guys' people's heads, they think, oh, I can just find a mini version of me and slot that person in, and they should have all these skills and all these things.
Yeah.
So the most common thing is like, I get it to some extent, but then also like, if they're you, they can go, they're not working as a salesperson. They're running their own agency. So slice off a piece of that, right? Slice off like the piece that you can outsource really easily, which is usually like the lead gen piece. It's really early in the sales funnel. So slice that out and hire for that specifically while you're still doing the closing. Get good at that, build that routine, build that out. Then you can hire somebody when you're at maybe 50 employees that comes in and just closes accounts. Like build that out in stages though. And I think a lot of people hire a salesperson and think, well, they're a salesperson. They should do everything from getting their own leads in all the way through upselling accounts that they've already closed. It's just, it's too much. And you've seen it fail. Like it fails all the time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I totally agree. And I like kind of the idea of slicing out responsibility. I feel like when I see it fail, I see agency owners that are treating hiring the salesperson like a silver bullet, right? Like, oh, okay, I can just hire this person and they're just going to come in and, like, as you said, automatically be good and automatically bring all these skills and even do better than me. And the reality is, like, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, it doesn't work that way, right? Like a couple things. One, like it obviously one, like if you're a pretty small agency, and this is just kind of my point of view, and you may disagree with this, but I feel like if you're a relatively small agency, there's a reason that a brand is going to go with you versus a much larger version of you, and you're part of it. You as the agency owner, you're part of the fabric, you're part of the brilliance, you're part of the why. And so it's pretty hard to pull yourself totally out of that process. Like this person who doesn't share your vision or didn't create your vision and didn't eat and breathe and can't just like sweat the values of your agency, they're just not going to be you. They're not going to perform like you. And that's part of the magic that's got you in the game in the first place. And so I think just the idea of like, well, I'll just bring this person in and they'll just like be all those things. To your point, like that, I don't think that's very practical. And I think it can work, at the right size, but also I find that agency owners just lack the appreciation for how long this ramp takes for somebody to like really understand you and what you're doing and to like do it in their own way. Like it takes time. So, but yeah, I think the thing you started with is a thing that I've always found to be true, which is like, and by the way, I often see these mistakes sub 50 and even sometimes sub 25. So again, I think it's like, these are founder led organizations to that size. full stop. And if you're, I often find agencies that have the founders who just like don't love sales and are trying to replace themselves as soon as humanly possible. It's like there is no replacement. You're going to have to find a way to fake love sales to success because that's just it.
That's
Like
100%
you
it.
can't replace yourself. Like
That's
not
100%.
that you have to be able to be successful before somebody else can be successful. Full stop.
Absolutely. And the thing that like, I rolled off a recent project with an agency that they're still independent and they have around 250, 275, somewhere in that 275 employees, say. The owner is still brought in on sales calls because when you get to that level and you're hunting like mammoths, they require that kind of buy-in from the C-level still. So like
Totally.
I've talked to agencies in the I don't know, 10 to 20 range, and they're like just exactly what you said. They're like, oh, I just got to replace myself, get out of sales. Like I'll ask them how they want to spend their day in like 3 to 5 years. And a lot of them are like, oh, I want to get out of sales completely. I'm like, well, I got real bad news for you. Like,
That's right. I gotta tell you something.
you're not going to love this. You paid me, so I'm going to tell you, but you're not going to enjoy this. And I think it's like, it's one of those things. If you're not selling to close accounts, you're selling the vision of what the agency is. You're selling this to employees. You're selling this to partners. Like you don't have a choice but to get good at selling in some way. Like that is your role as an owner.
And that's just a broader philosophical point. I think people lack that appreciation when they start businesses just in general. Like you sort of think that your job is to do the thing, and actually your job is not at all. Very minority of your job is to do the thing. Most of your job is like selling and building a team. That's your job.
Well, think of how much inertia there is to like get you to change a behavior, right?
Exactly.
You as a client, you as an employee, you as anything, you have to overcome that inertia. And that's what sales is. And you kind of like, I think you're right. I think a lot of people get into this and they're like, oh, I'm really good at, I could build a better website than anybody else, or I can get a better ROI on my PPC spend than anybody else. And that's nice, but you're saying the same exact thing that literally thousands of other agencies.
Everybody else is.
You have to cut through that inertia and cut through that noise somehow.
Yeah. People, a thing I often say is like the greatest cost for any client to pay is not your fee. It's the choice to do anything at all.
Absolutely.
Like the behavior change is the hard part. Once you get over that, like the money is secondary. That's the easy part. All right. Cool. Great. Awesome. Oof, 2 for 2. Caroline, what's next?
Hello. I just want to inform you guys, LinkedIn is up now. If you are on LinkedIn,
hey, welcome LinkedIn. We saved all the good stuff for LinkedIn. Don't worry. But look, we'll share the recording. You can catch the other 2 back. They were good too. All right. So LinkedIn, welcome. And just as a reminder for folks on LinkedIn, particularly if it's your first time, Agency Hot Seat. If you have questions, Nick and I are here to answer. Drop your questions in the comment. Caroline will read them back to us, and we will answer them live. Okay, Caroline, what's next?
All right. So our next question is, what do successful agencies do that slow growing agencies don't do?
That's a great question. You want to take this one first, or you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Okay. We're talking like top 1% of 1% here. That's what I'm thinking. So like, I run into this a lot, and it's weird to me. But I guess maybe it shouldn't be. Leaders at that level, and this isn't by size really, it's that success can come for a small agency, or it can come from a huge agency. But the ones that are doing really well, that don't seem to have sales problems, don't seem to have production problems or profitability problems, any of those, they have a really crystal clear idea of what they want to build. Like it is like they can articulate that to everybody, regardless of the person's understanding or familiarity with what that agency is or who they could be. They could tell you in a sentence what they're building. And to that end, they have essentially a relentless focus on getting there. And it's those shiny objects that I mentioned earlier that come in every day.
Yeah.
they are phenomenal at just knocking those away. And those two things go hand in hand, right? Like, you know what you want to build, you know how you want to build it, and it's kind of like you're willing this thing into existence, and it weirdly works.
Yeah, yeah, man, Nick, I don't think I have anything to add. I totally agree with you, honestly. Like the thing that's always kind of was kicking in my head as I heard this question was just like intentionality. Like it's just,
Yeah.
I think that the the big difference is the folks that, and you kind of, I don't know if you experience this, but I certainly do. Like, I think you kind of know when you meet an agency owner who's like captaining a fast growing agency that's generating good margins. Like you can kind of feel it because, again, these are people that don't half-ass anything. Like they're open. That's the other thing I'll add is like, these are not people that are necessarily, granted, they have like a high degree of conviction and determination and focus, and they don't let themselves get distracted, but they're also not like know-it-alls, right? They're the he who is wise admits they know nothing kind of people. The people who are open to learning and open to sort of like evolving and changing and but are not, they're not like floating through space. Like these are people who they are approaching their agency with a high degree of intentionality. They know exactly what they should focus on, and that's where they devote their attention. As opposed to, again, I mentioned the sort of like the people who grow through word of mouth and organic and referrals, the people who let the business happen to them, who are reactionary, right? Who wake up this morning and I have these problems and I'm gonna tackle these problems, and tomorrow I'll see what tomorrow holds. Like you definitely kind of can get a sense for these are the reactionary business owners who are tackling the problems as they come. And that is a perfectly fine way to stay alive. It is not a very effective way to grow.
I mean, it was.
And so, yeah, right. Well, when there's like a lot of free money being pumped into a system, and it's relatively difficult, and that intentionality comes with. I mean, that intentionality permeates everything, right? Like the idea to have a very specified niche or area of expertise or service offering, right? That's an intentional choice that fast-growing agencies make. And so, like, yeah, having a niche is like one thing I would say is often true of fast-growing agencies, but again, I think it tracks back to just the level of intentionality with which you make any decision. I think is I don't know. I think that's
I love that perspective, because like I think back to like how this industry grew, over the decades since I've been looking at it, and you almost had to try to fail for a large portion of it.
Yeah,
like you could really ride the wave of increasing digital marketing spend and increasing DX spend for the last, well, up through 2021, really. And it's only been in the last 2 years that stuff started getting choppy. Spend pulled back, interest rates shot up, all that hit. And now I think there's a washout, not a full washout, because shops aren't closing at the rate that, I would expect them to if there was like some kind of major thing. But I think it's just becoming harder. I think it's people are like, oh, I'm riding this wave, and it's not doing the thing that it used to do.
It's gotten as hard as it probably always should have been, and as hard as it normally is in other industries. Like if I'm being like agencies, there are none of our clients fall into this category, just to be clear to everyone. But there are agencies that that probably don't have a right to exist. Like if I'm being very, capitalistic, right? Like
that's not a hot take.
Yeah, like there are agencies that have that have not yet earned their right to exist, and this is just a reckoning with that, right? This is just a reckoning. This is a reversion to the mean in my mind, to like what it should feel like. And yeah, this is freaking hard. Welcome to the game. Shit's hard. Stuff's hard, and growth does not come accidentally, and So I think that's and so for the folks that are not approaching it intentionally, you're experiencing like what happens, and you're gonna run out of money. Cool. Okay.
I mean, there's a silver lining there, though, right? Like these are intelligent people. Like these are people running these things,
and talented people.
Like they know their stuff. I haven't run into somebody who's like a dummy. Like they know how to do this. And I think the silver lining in it is it's these guys, you're small enough to change pretty quickly. Like you're nimble. You can
Yep.
enact stuff and go out there and level up your sophistication and do the things that you need to do pretty
Yep.
quickly, like on the order of months. Like this isn't, you're not
Yeah.
turning the
Yeah. Yeah.
Titanic here. You're really nimble.
Yep. Totally agreed. Totally agreed. Okay, I have more thoughts on this, but I know that I saw some questions trickle in from the peanut gallery. So let's go ahead, Caroline. What do we
Yes.
got?
So this one says there's been a ton of talk about how hard the agency business has been over the past 2 years, 1 to 2 years. What do you see happening over the next few years, and will there be a lot of consolidation?
Mm.
Well, I guess I mean, on the latter point, like the consolidation, like I would say, just in general, there's been a lot of consolidation in a lot of industries. Like the M&A market has been relatively active just broadly. Like PE has driven, PE has entered a lot of spaces that it hasn't historically lived. It's happening in our space, accounting, as it is in the creative space. And so I think that's definitely having somewhat of an impact. And again, it's just like interest rates were enormously low. And so PE funds raised a bunch of money, and they are still, not to say that it all needs to be deployed, but they're still sitting on some of that money. So while the market seized up a little bit in terms of valuations maybe a year ago, I feel like right now, just anecdotally, a lot of our clients are having conversations. The multiples we're seeing are pretty good. Anyway, so like, well, do I think there's going to be activity? Yes. Do I think there's going to be like mass consolidation? I personally don't. I'm not actually sure that, because ultimately PE is what drives consolidation. And I don't think, just like with accounting, quite frankly, like these are bespoke service kind of, we all attempt to create like productized, repeatable revenue generation, like repeatable sources or whatever. But like these are not, we're not widget makers. We're not selling t-shirts. These don't consolidate perfectly in my mind. I don't know that the PE experiment is going to work perfectly well. So all that to say, like, do I expect mass consolidation in this industry? I would say I do not. What I would say that I expect is, again, I mean, I expect a continuation of a reversion to the mean. I'll just tell you, by the way, that so back to the description that you gave of like what defines a top agency.
Mhm.
Those top agencies in our portfolio are having good years. Like this is not a murder across I mean, it's not everybody uniformly distributed getting beat up. We have some clients that are beating their numbers and are having, like, they're particularly existing clients they already have a relationship with, are spending money. I think it's going to continue. Interest rates are going to come down. So like, whether we have a soft or a hard landing economically, like people are going to start to spend even more. The venture landscape is going to sort of free up, which obviously, has an impact on the creative space. So again, I think like we'll continue to see some of these lower quality, maybe shouldn't exist in the first place, agencies wash out. And then, like I said, I think reversion to the mean probably, is what I would expect. What do you think, Nick?
I agree with a lot of that. I look at this industry from the perspective of why does it exist in the first place? And from what I found, it exists because someone was able to tinker with a new technology before that tech could unlock any kind of capabilities, any business capabilities, any economic benefit from that
Yeah.
tech. They tinkered with it because we're all kind of nerds here, and they found something interesting, and eventually the group of them around that tech turned that into a business case. Well, if you're doing that in-house, if you're doing that in a brand, are you gonna sit there and enjoy your like 110K a year and 9 to 5 and
Totally.
like you're not gonna do
Yeah.
that. You're gonna go out on your own. You're gonna say, "Oh man, I have like 30 companies I could sell this solution to. I'm gonna go do it." So
Yeah.
every new tech that had a business case came out. Social media did, big data did 10 years ago, AI
Yep.
ML did. Like you had all of these things where new agencies would spring up around them. And I think that keeps happening. I don't see a stop to that. So the in-house teams, as they gobble up new agencies, because a lot of them are always buying agencies. Um, as they gobble
Yep.
them up and they bring that talent in-house that could do social media really well 10 years ago, well, now that's more commoditized. That's not a thing that, like,
Hmm.
it's pay to play, or it's table stakes at this point. Um, The new
Yep.
tech that's coming
Totally
out,
agreed.
though, is driving the creation of new agencies. So if you think of any kind of like roll up strategy, well, yeah, you can roll up what's there now. That's nice. And you can have, some of the
Yep.
best social media marketers in your rolled up agency.
Yep.
That the value that you'll be able to extract from that as a PE firm or as a large agency is limited. And there's a time frame on that.
Totally.
Um,
Yep.
Secondly, agencies don't scale. I wrote a whole thing on this
Yep.
and I got a lot of crap for it. And I stand behind it 100% because every piece of data I've seen,
Totally.
that I've grabbed in survey data, that I've looked at in the industry, you get less profitable as you get bigger. Like as your size increases, your profit margins go down. That's the opposite of what you want to see in an M&A roll-up strategy. That's one of the main
Of course.
pillars of why you would roll them up.
Economies of scale is what we're looking
Yes,
for, not diseconomies.
they don't exist in industries.
They
If you
don't
want to sell
exist.
more
Yeah.
work, you either increase your price or you build more capacity to be able to do that. Like those are your
Yeah, totally.
options.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I do not think there's
And it
a
should
massive
be,
roll up.
by the way,
Stick around.
I totally agree. And the funny thing is the level. I didn't see the thing that you had written, though. Now I'm going to go read it, and I'm surprised that you got shit for it. To be honest with
Oh
you,
my
because
God.
it like isn't that kind of the sale? Like, isn't that kind of the sales proposition that we're all selling anyway? Is the idea that like we're these small,
Right.
premium, nimble. Like you don't want to go with a mass like a holding company agency, right? Like we are more cutting edge and we're more authentic and we're more personal and whatever. And there's some real truth to that, and there's some real pricing power that comes with that. And the further up the chain you go, the more commoditized you get, and the more your profit is from a reduction of cost and not an expansion of margin. And so like it just that opportunity doesn't exist like it does in other industries.
Yeah.
Because like where like an industry like accounting, for instance, we get our margin from like trust and credibility, and those things grow with scale. Agencies don't get their margin from. I mean, trust helps, but like being cool and being on the vanguard of what's new and creative, and like those don't scale with size. Those vary indirectly. So
It goes
anyway,
back to
like
why
it
they exist in the
makes
first place, right? Like they can do
exactly.
this
It goes back to why
thing. They can do this thing better
yeah,
than anybody in-house at a brand.
yeah,
So that's why they're hired. They're not hired because they, I don't know, have 500 people they could throw at a problem. That's easy. The in-house team can
yeah,
do that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool. Love it. Okay. Awesome. Caroline,
I hope I didn't just
I know we've
torpedo
got
the
others.
viewers.
No, no, yeah, no, no. Look, I think this is no. I think this is a good. I think this is a good discussion. And again, there, like you said, there's some silver linings in there, just in general. And one of them is that like again, I think there's some there. It's I don't think either of us believe that the industry is headed towards like a market crash or anything
Oh,
like
no,
that. Like I
not at
think
all.
clearly, like this. Look, Asians have been around a long time. They're going to be around for a long time. Like there's just, it's we're going to have peaks and troughs and those sorts of things. But like great agencies will continue to do very well. It continues to be an incredible way to print cash.
Mhm.
It's not like you're not necessarily going to get the greatest exit multiples like if you were building a SaaS company, but it is there. It is a great way to have a wonderful career in a print cash.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that'll continue to be true. All right, Caroline.
Okay, so our next one starts out, our sales pick up in the holiday season due to increased ad spend. Because the increased spend carries over into January, we're considering changing our fiscal year to start in February and ending it in January so that we can capture the January sales in the same year as November and December. So my question is, what are the pros and cons of adjusting our fiscal year?
That's all you, buddy.
Well, I'll start with this. No, you must start. Hey, so I mean, just so what you're describing is like pretty much every major retailer on the planet has a 131 fiscal year end because of what you're describing. Like more often, the reason that they have a 131 is because of returns, right? Like so they have this like huge holiday spike, and then people open their gifts and they take their jeans back, and so through the month of January, returns occur, and the idea is like I want to look at like the economic year, and that economic year doesn't track the calendar, it tracks a different sort of 12-month period of time. A perfect example, I'm on the board of a soccer like a youth soccer program, and we have a June 30th fiscal year, and the reason is because like our soccer year starts in July and it goes fall spring, and so there's an incentive to like the idea of your fiscal year is that you want it to more or less capture a sort of like discrete unit of economic activity. For most businesses, the calendar year is the right answer, and so mostly I'm just like, don't get fancy with it. Calendar year. If you really do have like and to this, it sounds like this person's point, like if you really do have a meaningful amount of activity in January that is like attached to the work of the November, December, and they're kind of all related and you want them in the same period, that makes a lot of sense to me. So I would say do it. In terms of like cons to changing your fiscal year end, I don't think there's like a ton other than it just a little bit of added complexity, right? Like, if you switch tax accounts, you gotta like let them know, oh, we have a 131 fiscal. When this sounds so stupid, but like Q1 is not what the rest of the world calls Q1, right? Like everybody, when they say Q1, they mean January, February, March. You mean February, March, April. That's weird. People are going to, you're going to just say that in conversation and people are going to be confused and you're going to be confused and employees are going to be confused. It happens, right? Like, but that shouldn't be a reason not to do it. I'm just telling you if there's a con, it's just like it's a counter convention and there's going to be like small little nuances. But what you're describing is exactly the reason that anybody who doesn't have a calendar fiscal year chooses to not have a calendar fiscal year. It's for situations just like this. So I think that makes perfect sense. The last thing I'll say is you don't have to change your fiscal year in order to evaluate your business on a slightly different convention, right? So like you might be a calendar year taxpayer because who gives a shit, right? Like it's arbitrary, right? And that's the convention. But you, for management reporting, want to look at your business from January to January. Well, like that's just a different filter in QuickBooks. There's no reason you can't just do that and forecast and treat it that way. And your taxes are just done on a different convention. That might be something I would recommend, is just kind of informally go to looking at your business one way and not necessarily file to have a different fiscal year. But that's a choice I'll leave to the asker of the question. But I co-sign the idea of looking at your business from February to January. Sounds like that makes some sense.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
Cool. Okay, great.
I don't have any insight in
it. But you didn't see anything glaringly wrong about that. So I'll take it. So it.
No, I just remember when I was a equity analyst and companies report on a weird cadence, it drove me nuts because you had to sync them all to be able to analyze them against comps. So I don't know if that plays into it at all.
Well, I used to do, yeah. Well, and again, these are things like, the larger you get, the more it matters. In public companies, it really matters. In fact, I think you even have some sort of responsibility to choose a fiscal year that correctly reflects your business. I used to work with I was on the agency side, and we had a grocer as a client, and they didn't have standard months. They were like, yeah, I'm not kidding. Like it wasn't January. It was like January 1st to February 4th. It was like weeks because the weekends matter. Because there's like seasonality, and it was like, oh my God. So literally we would say, we're going to do this in February. They're like, what do you mean? Like this period? It was period 2. It was just like, you guys get out of here. This is too much. We've over-seasoned the dinner here. Anyway, okay. Caroline, we've probably got time for 1 to 2 more good ones. So what do we got? What's pick your juiciest?
Yeah, I wanted to address a comment really quick, circling back to the conversation we were just having.
Oh, sure, yeah.
About not necessarily a crash, but is the market overcrowded? If you guys have any opinions or statements there.
Are there too many agencies?
I want to say like at an exact answer, yes, there have to be too many agencies because like out of 45,000, some of them are not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
That's a tough question to answer. It's a good question because I think it relates to, are there enough agencies doing the type of work in the text that are demanded? Are there enough AI implementation agencies? Are there enough doing stuff in, I don't know, tech du jour? Like, I don't, that's a tough thing to answer. I could, this
I,
is super interesting. I
I'm
want to look at this. I want to dig back in our data
you
and
gonna
look
have
at
to
how
go.
they're all doing.
I mean, this is probably a cop out of an answer, but I think the answer is yes and no. Like there are, yeah, I know, right?
There
Can
been
you
so
believe
many
this?
people.
This asshole. But here's why I say that. Like, I mean, this is a service agency. It's just like it's white space. Like my point is like there is absolutely an enormous amount of white space for any number of agencies to start tomorrow and go grab unaddressed market share. Like in areas where we are underservicing, right? Like for the right entrepreneur, there's definitely opportunity tomorrow. And sort of by definition,
Yeah.
without necessarily stealing share, there's opportunity to create share.
Mhm.
And so by definition, there aren't enough agencies there, theoretically. But there's definitely agencies in spaces that should not be there. There are definitely too many agencies in some areas. Not necessarily even just mathematically, just because of the way they're positioned. Like there's just too many agencies that are not positioned at all. We
Yeah.
have a surplus of unpositioned agencies. We have a dearth of agencies addressing specific needs. What those needs are, I think, are sort of like limitless. I mean, again, I think that's my answer. Like there is still like it's not definitionally we're overcrowded. Therefore, like if we were just sort of like categorically overcrowded, then sort of by definition, the only way you could create an agency tomorrow and win business is to steal share. And
Mhm.
I do think that is definitely the best way to win business, right? Rather than creating new. But like, yeah, I think there's room to create net new for sure.
All right.
But not everywhere.
Two more. Well, man, if I think about it like an industry that is overcrowded, like it's not like car washes, right? Like there's a
Yeah.
million car washes from PE that popped up over the last few years. I don't think
Yeah.
it's like there's an agency on every corner right now.
I don't think so. I I don't think so. Also, the car washes. I'm always looking at these car washes and I'm just thinking, how's this thing cash flow? I mean, that's like a $3-4 million car wash, like $8 a pop. Who's doing the rolls on this thing?
That is
Sure.
a zero interest rate phenomenon, is what
I
those
know
are.
it must be. Yeah, it totally is. What a wild thing. Anyway, you're totally right. It's not car washes. It's not
Mm-mm.
car washes.
Mm-mm.
Because like it also is the kind of business that, like the sort of like again it's a great business, but it because it doesn't scale and because the exit multiples are relatively low, you're not going to get a speculative bubble. Like
Yeah.
zero interest rate money is not going to come in and just create a ton of agencies for no freaking reason, because it's not a great use. Like it's not a capital asset like a car wash, right? So you're not going to see that. It's not going to be systemically overcrowded probably ever. It's just too hard to do.
Yeah. Yes, agreed. I love that insight too.
All right, Caroline, did you say, was there something else that we wanted to come back to,
Yes.
or oh yeah.
Yeah. So this comment
Oh,
says to hop on the overcrowding question, what are the top ways to cut through the static of the we're different than other agencies because of X? And or is it worthwhile for North American agencies to look expanding into other geographical markets?
I like that question.
you should
I just
start with
talked,
this because I
yeah, I
feel
just
like you
talked to
have
somebody about it
strong.
today.
Yeah. This is a Nick question.
I
I
was
mean, I'll
talking
answer too,
to a guy from, not going to name the thing, but he's from a large player in something software for agencies. And
but okay.
they operate primarily outside of the US. And when we were talking about the market dynamics of in US versus rest of world, specifically over the last year, and he's like, we've just been slaughtered. Everything has dried up outside of the US market. I don't think it's that drastic personally. I have non-US clients and
Yeah,
they're all doing fairly well. But I do think it's this more agencies from outside the US want to come into the US market than agencies in the US want to go out. Like this is still a very good market,
totally.
especially if you look at the economics over the last year and a half. Like we've been good, like better than good. Um,
Yeah.
Second part of the question is like how to cut. Sorry, do you have
Yes.
anything?
No. I totally agree with you. I mean, I can only speak anecdotally, and so you shouldn't treat this as like this is fact,
Yeah.
but just anecdotally. When I ran my agency, we added a person to try to expand outside of the U.S. And a thing that like we were being naive and stupid, but the thing I totally didn't appreciate until having done the experiment, is like I didn't totally like our in general, like on average, our brands are bigger, the budgets are bigger, our volume is bigger. Like it's just a different game overseas. And when you're competing with overseas firms and you're a US firm and you're competing over what is a smaller pie in most geographies, it's just not as attractive. So
In ones
I'm
that you don't
usually
understand the culture always.
exactly.
Like
So
you
I
have
often
culture barriers, you have exchange rate risk, you have like uh, local laws and local requirements. Like
exactly
the list of like the barriers are humongous.
huge, and the prize just doesn't substantiate because I think the prize is smaller. That's why everybody's trying to come to the US. As you said, it's a perfect market. So anyway, co-sign what you're saying. All right. So now how do I differentiate?
Yeah. Um, do something unique. That's gonna be the worst response ever. But it's
Well,
like
but isn't that the truth?
well, it is. Have data to back up why you're where you are. And if you don't have that, if you don't have the ROI or the case studies or the reason why you're serving type of client with Y type of service and solving this problem, if you don't have that, it's impossible to cut through the noise. You are the noise at that point. So develop that kind of like that's really nebulous. Let me give a more concrete example. Um, uh, you could very easily go into a subset of an industry that you've had success in the past on a few projects and
Yep.
start really communicating with them and understand what like the core thing is that you're delivering. It's not a social media post. It's not a website. Nobody buys that. They buy a solution to a problem that they personally have, not this
Yep.
giant business organization, them personally. They want to get promoted. They want to protect their job. They want to not think about doing this thing. You're taking something off their plate. What are you solving for them? And then go hard in messaging in that and really figure out good solutions to it. At that point, when you start using the vocabulary that they use to describe their problems, you've cut through the noise. You're not there anymore.
You're totally, yeah, man. You said two things that I thought were gold, so I'll restate them. The one is like you look inside your own business first. Like you've done work for certain verticals or areas or problems that you like the idea of just like sitting here and picking something greenfield that you've never had any experience with, no exposure to. That's hard. Like you don't have any credibility, no comps, nothing, no case studies. So like, yeah, start internally and just say, okay, we've had a couple of clients that look like this, a couple that look like this. Those all may represent opportunities. And then the second thing you said, which is like, it's so much of it boils down to sounding like them. It almost doesn't, it almost seems like, oh, it should be more than that or whatever. But it's just like, it would shock you when you like take us, for instance, we're accountants and we work in the agency space. It is not all of us who have lived in the agency space for as long as we have. We know that like, there's nothing totally crazy or fancy or unique. It's not, rocket science. It's just, but like, we have our own lexicon. We have our vocabulary. We have our own problems. And it doesn't take years and years and years and years to figure them out, but it takes focus. It takes intent. It takes interest. It takes curiosity. And when you can develop that and you can act and sound and have empathy for their problems and demonstrate that, that's all it is. That's all it is. And again, I think it's easier than you think. It just takes like intentionality.
Well, you have a lot of ex-agency people on your team, right? Like you have people
totally.
that came from that world. Like that's a cheat code.
Totally. And that's a thing I would recommend for anybody. If you're again, lots of agency owners also came from different worlds. Okay, start there. Is that the world for you? Right? Like that's why we got into agencies. I came from agencies. Okay, great. My partner came from agencies. Oh, well, we know this. Let's do this. Right. So anyway, cool. Okay. Yeah, I like that. I thought that's good. Okay, Caroline, I think that's it. I think we did it. Did we do it? We did it. Okay. Yes, we did it. All right. So first of all, thank you. Big first thank you to Nick, who was a wonderful guest. Nick, this has been so fun having you on.
Thanks so much for having me.
You have a permanent invite to the agency hot seat. This was
Careful,
awesome.
you won't get rid of me.
I really enjoyed the debate, and well, I shouldn't call it a debate. I enjoyed the discussion. We mostly violently agreed, but I enjoyed the discussion. And thanks to everybody else who tuned in on YouTube, and those of you that had the perseverance to tune in on LinkedIn. I know it was a little bit took us a second to get it going, but we got it. If we didn't get to your questions this time, good news. We hang on to these. We recycle them to next time. Nobody is ready with a question right at the first minute, so that's usually when we answer old questions. So we do this. What is this? The third Thursday? That's right. Third Thursday. We're going to put the thing on. We'll put the appointment on LinkedIn. Feel free to RSVP. But for those of you that join, thank you. Join us next time. You can see for Upsourced, we've got a YouTube channel at Upsourced. You can catch previous iterations of the agency hot seat and anything else that we've put out there. Nick, for folks that heard your insight and thought, and you referenced like 3 or 4 things that you've written, reports you've done, where could I go to find more about those things?
I post everything in my newsletter. Like that is the place to do everything. I've slacked off on a blog for like 2 years now. So everything
The
now
newsletter
is
it.
Go to the website, prometheanresearch.com. I'm sure there's a link somewhere. We'll put it somewhere in the video.
We'll put it in the comments.
Yeah. Get that engagement.
That's right. Cool. PrometheanResearch.com. Awesome. All right, Nick, thank you. Crew, Nick, until next time. See you later.
Thanks.
Yep. We're good. I think